Hello and welcome to the 11 o'clock news. Tonight we have a segment called Around the World. We have representatives from 3 different countries, Ireland, Hong Kong, and UAE. I will be asking them a few questions to inform you, our viewers, a little more about them. Let me introduce you to Steve, Shabazz Mohammed, and Jafar Kabaz Johnson. First of all, could you tell me where your country's rank is on the Index of Economic Freedom? Where does it lie in the political economic compass?
My country, Ireland, ranks number 11 on the index. I would say it's a pretty fair assessment of the country. I mean, in 2008 we went through the recession and it was tough for 2 years. We digressed by almost 10% in those 2 years by 2010, and since then it's been getting better. The last 2 years now we've increased our GDP both years, and hoping for this one to be our third. Those 2 years, the first one increased by 2.2% and last year by 0.2%. We're definitely a capitalist country. It's really easy to open your own business in Ireland, and the tax bracket is really low, the highest tax bracket. So it makes it really easy for rich people to stay rich, but at the same time it makes it tough for the poor to get richer.
Interesting.
Alright, so I'm doing Hong Kong, and my country in the Index of Economic Freedom ranks number 1 at a score of 89.3. It lies on the political. It lies in the capitalist section on the political economic compass, as for it is a democracy and it runs on a basis of supply and demand.
Okay, so my country is the UAE. It's 28th on the Index of Freedom with a score of 71.1. It is fascist because it has one authority ruling the entire country, and it's an absolute monarchy. It has an open economy and not a command economy because it works within a capitalist system.
What is the current unemployment rate?
In Ireland right now, it's at an unnaturally high number of 15%. This is due to coming out of the recession, and as we continue to stabilize in the next few years, it's expected to come down.
Wow, that's a really interesting point, Steve.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. For the UAE, the unemployment rate is 4.20%, which has gone up in the past 20 years, but it's been going up and down since.
Well, that's not good. Alright, so Hong Kong's unemployment rate at the moment indicates that it's 3.3%. It has fluctuated the last couple of years and has gone up and down, but at the moment they're reaching their all-time high.
Very interesting. Is the economic growth in your country continuously increasing?
As I said earlier, after the recession, we struggled. We digressed, we regressed like 10% economically within those 2 years. But since then, we've gone up by 2.5% in 2 years. And also, it's been predicted by some economic professionals that Ireland will continue to stabilize and the economy will get stronger as we go in the next couple of years.
Very interesting.
The UAE is one of the most developed countries in the Arab Gulf and has one of the highest GDPs per capita in the world. And since last year, the GDP has grown 4.4%.
Stats would show that Hong Kong's continuously increasing when it comes to economic growth. Hong Kong's highly competitive regulatory regime allows it to keep up with the top countries in the world, which also is one of the main reasons why they have such a low unemployment rate. It's a small country with a lot of big businesses.
Could you link an economic thinker to your country?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say David Ricardo is a great economic thinker that would relate to Ireland very well. He's a strong believer in capitalism. He followed in the footsteps of Adam Smith, and Ireland is definitely one of those countries he would support. He'd agree with some of the principles we have in the low income tax rates that support the rich and aren't very beneficial to the poor. I just say he relates really well to the country.
Thanks, Steve.
For my country, I would use a representative like Adam Smith. He's a capitalist thinker. He believed in self-interest, which and also believed in limiting government intervention, which allowed people to work on their own, which coincides with how Hong Kong functions today. Based on what we know and what he believed, he would approve of how Hong Kong is run.
Very interesting.
So the economic thinker that I chose is Karl Marx. and he wouldn't like the way that the UAE is run because it goes against his saying, from each according to his ability to each according to his own, which means that people do what they're good at to get what they need, which is not the way the UAE is living because they're very greedy in what they're buying, and they're buying a lot. And also, Karl Marx said that the working class should be the more dominant class, or one of the most dominant classes, and in the UAE that's the lowest class, so he wouldn't like that either.
Very nice. Speak a little bit about the financials of your country.
Right now, Ireland is behind financially where it needs to be. Following the recession, we had to take a $90 billion bailout from the European Union to try and get our banks back in order and shore up our economy a little bit. Since then, our GDP since 2008 has a compounded growth of -1%. But as we continue on through the years, is getting stronger. This year, right at the moment, it's a growth of 0.7%. So it's another positive year for us.
That's great.
Financially, the UAE is doing great. The GDP in the UAE reached to 360 billion, and it shows no signs of regression. And the nominal GDP rose by 20.8% in 2012, which is more than the 298 billion that it was earning. And the GNI in the UAE is approximately $378.3 billion.
Wow. Very cool.
When it comes to Hong Kong, its financial state is clearly above all. Its GDP this year was $364 billion, and per capita would be 50,716. It has been in a stable position for the past 19 consecutive years, and it comes to us to no shock as why Hong Kong is ranked first on top of every other country in the index.
Wow. Well, I'd just like to thank you all for joining us.
And thank you, Andy Johnson.
Thank you, Andy Johnson.
Thank you, Jonathan.
No problem.
You're right, Terrio. Oh!